You still chose me? She asked. The billionaire CEO backed the woman her family betrayed. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's emotional story about two women whose lives are about to collide through betrayal, courage, and an unexpected choice of the heart, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It is quick, it is free, and it helps us continue bringing you more heartfelt, dramatic, and unforgettable stories about courage, healing, second chances, and love between women. Your support truly means the world to us. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character, and the moment a powerful family took almost everything from her, without knowing that one woman carrying their name would eventually risk everything to stand by her side. The day the Hartwell family destroyed my career, I had never even met Evelyn Hartwell. I remember thinking about that strange fact as I stood alone inside what used to be Claire Donovan Design, holding a screwdriver in one hand and the brass letters of my own name in the other. 6 months earlier, those letters had meant something. They meant 12 years of early mornings, impossible deadlines, stubborn clients, and the quiet pride of building something without anyone handing it to me. Now the office was empty, except for 2 cardboard boxes, a folding chair, and the pale rectangles on the walls where my framed projects used to hang. I was 38 years old, and by 5 o'clock that Friday afternoon, I would no longer have a business. It had started with the Hartwell Restoration Project, the kind of contract a small Boston design studio dreams about. Hartwell Properties wanted to renovate a historic building near Beacon Hill, and winning that job had felt like the moment everything I had sacrificed was finally paying off. Then I found numbers that didn't make sense. Certain invoices had been changed, costs had been moved between accounts. I was asked to approve paperwork I couldn't honestly verify. I refused, politely at first, firmly when they asked again. 3 days later, my contract was terminated. 2 weeks after that, another client postponed a project without explanation. Then another disappeared. People who had once returned my calls within an hour suddenly needed 3 days. A colleague finally told me what everyone else was too uncomfortable to say. Someone was telling people I was unreliable, difficult, careless with confidential information. I laughed when I heard it because none of those words sounded like me. Then I went home and cried because I understood exactly how quickly a reputation could become whatever powerful people said it was. I fought back the only way I knew how. I saved every email, every invoice, every revision, every document connected to the Hartwell project. Not because I wanted revenge. Revenge had always seemed exhausting to me. I wanted proof that I had not imagined what happened. Proof that refusing to sign something I believed was wrong had not made me foolish. But proof did not pay rent. By spring, I had burned through most of my savings keeping the studio alive. That Friday, I finally stopped pretending determination could solve everything. I removed the last brass letter from the glass door and placed it carefully into the box. For a second, my reflection stared back at me, where my company name had been. I barely recognized the woman looking through that empty glass. Maybe they were right, I whispered. My phone buzzed on the folding chair behind me. I almost ignored it. Then it buzzed again. I crossed the room, expecting another creditor, or perhaps my landlord asking when I would return the keys. Instead, the screen showed a name I knew, even though I had never seen it on my phone before. Evelyn Hartwell, billionaire CEO of Hartwell Properties, daughter of the family whose name was printed across the document sitting inside the box at my feet. I stared until the phone nearly stopped ringing. Then, against every instinct telling me not to, I answered. Claire Donovan? A woman asked. Her voice was calm, but something underneath it sounded anything but calm. Yes. There was a brief silence. Then Evelyn Hartwell said the 9 words that made me forget how to breathe. Claire, I think my family lied about you. For several seconds, I said nothing. Outside the studio windows, Boston traffic moved along the wet street, as if this were an ordinary Friday, as if the most powerful woman connected to the worst 6 months of my life had not just called me. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Evelyn exhaled softly. Because I found something this morning that I think you deserve to see. Every instinct I had told me to hang up. If this is about a settlement, call my attorney. It is not. Then what is it? Another pause. Evidence. That word changed everything. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Evelyn Hartwell in a quiet conference room on the 32nd floor of Hartwell Properties headquarters. I had seen photographs of her in business magazines, usually standing beside glass buildings or speaking at conferences, but photographs had not captured how controlled she seemed in person. She was 42, dressed simply in a navy suit, her light brown hair pulled back, her expression composed. Yet when she placed a thick folder between us, her fingers hesitated for just a moment. "Before you open this," she said, "I need to apologize." I almost laughed. "You do not know me." "No," Evelyn replied, "but my company hurt you." "Your company?" I looked directly at her. "Or your family?" Something shifted behind her eyes. "That is what I am trying to determine." I opened the folder. Inside were internal emails, contract notes, and copies of invoices I recognized immediately. My stomach tightened when I saw my own name. One email described me as a potential liability. Another recommended ending my contract before I could raise further questions. Then I found the sentence that made my hands go still. A senior Hartwell executive had instructed staff to question my professional reliability if anyone asked why the contract had ended. "You knew about this?" I whispered. "I found out this morning, and you expect me to believe that?" Evelyn did not defend herself. She simply met my eyes. "No. I expect you to decide what you believe after you have seen everything." That answer surprised me more than an argument would have. She slid another document toward me. It authorized a substantial payment for damages to my business. I pushed it back without reading the amount. "I do not want your money." "Claire, you lost your studio." "I know what I lost." My voice shook, and I hated that it did. "Money will not make former clients forget what they heard about me. It will not give me back the mornings when I wondered whether I had somehow caused this myself." Evelyn looked down at the untouched document. For the first time, the Billionaire chief executive officer did not look powerful. She looked ashamed. "Then tell me what would make this right." The question hung between us. I thought about my empty office, the brass letters packed in a cardboard box, and the files I had saved when giving up would have been easier. "My name," I said quietly. "I want my name back." Evelyn studied me for a long moment, then closed the settlement folder. "All right." She reached for the internal records instead. "Then we start with the truth." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I noticed one email she had turned face down. "What is that?" I asked. Evelyn froze. Slowly, she turned it over. At the bottom was a familiar Hartwell signature. Evelyn stared at it before looking back at me. "This," she said, her voice suddenly quieter, "is why I asked you to meet me in person." The signature belonged to Margaret Hartwell, Evelyn's mother. I knew the name because everyone in Boston real estate knew it. Margaret had spent nearly 3 decades turning Hartwell Properties from a respected regional company into an empire, and even after stepping away from daily operations, people still spoke about her as if she were sitting quietly behind every important decision. I looked from the signature to Evelyn. "Your mother approved this?" Evelyn did not answer immediately. "She approved ending your contract." "And damaging my reputation?" "I do not know yet." I closed the folder. "That sounds convenient." "It sounds terrible," Evelyn said, "but I will not accuse anyone of something until I can prove it." That was the first moment I understood why she had called me, instead of simply sending lawyers. She was not asking me to trust her. She was asking for enough time to discover whether she could trust her own family. We spent the next 3 hours comparing records. I had saved every email, invoice, meeting note, and contract revision from the project. Evelyn had access to internal files I had never seen. Separately, they told incomplete stories. Together, they formed a pattern. Costs had been reassigned. Dates had been altered. Questions I raised had been described internally as delays. My refusal to approve uncertain expenses had somehow become evidence that I was difficult to work with. "Who benefits from this?" I asked. Evelyn leaned back, staring at the papers spread across the conference table. "That is what worries me." Her phone rang twice. She ignored it both times. At nearly 9 o'clock, I realized neither of us had eaten dinner. Evelyn noticed me looking at the clock. There is a diner 2 blocks away that stays open late. I raised an eyebrow. You eat at diners? For the first time that evening, she smiled. It was small and tired, but genuine. Claire, I am wealthy. I am not allergic to pancakes. I laughed before I could stop myself, and the sound felt strange after months of carrying anger everywhere. 20 minutes later, we sat in a booth beside a rain-streaked window with coffee between us. Evelyn had removed her suit jacket and looked less like the woman from magazine covers. Why did you refuse to sign? She asked. Because my name was on the work. Even knowing you might lose the contract? I did not think I would lose my entire business. I wrapped both hands around my coffee mug. But yes, even then, Evelyn looked at me differently after that. Not with pity, with something closer to respect. My father used to say reputation is what people believe about you, she said. I believed that for years. And now I think character is what you do when protecting your reputation would require becoming someone you cannot respect. The words stayed with me. So did the sadness beneath them. We returned to headquarters just before 10. Evelyn gave me temporary access to a secure project archive, and I gave her copies of everything I had saved. At the elevator, she stopped me. One condition, Claire. If we find something that implicates my family, I will not hide it. I studied her face, searching for hesitation. And my condition is that you do not protect me either. I want the truth, not a billionaire fixing my life. Evelyn nodded. Agreed. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, then turned back. She was still standing there, surrounded by the polished marble and quiet wealth of an empire bearing her name. For the first time, I wondered whether that empire felt less like something she owned and more like something she had inherited responsibility for. My phone chimed before the doors closed. Evelyn had forwarded one newly recovered email. I opened it on the ride down. There were only 2 sentences, written 6 months earlier. The first mentioned my contract. The second mentioned another small business that had asked questions before I did. I stared at the screen as the elevator descended. I had spent months believing this story was about what the Hartwells had done to me. Suddenly, I realized I might not have been the first. By Monday morning, I had a list of 4 small businesses whose names appeared in the Hartwell records, and every one of them had disappeared from company projects after questioning something they believed was wrong. That discovery should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, it made me angry at myself for spending months wondering whether I had somehow deserved what happened. Evelyn called before 8. I found the same names, she said. Then this is bigger than me. Yes. Her voice sounded tired. And Claire, I think we need to be careful about what we assume until we have the complete record. I agreed, but I also needed something she could not give me. I needed a reason to get out of bed that had nothing to do with Hartwell Properties. That reason arrived that afternoon, when an old client named Susan Mercer called about a neighborhood library in Dorchester. The building was modest, the budget was painfully small, and the community organization running it wanted to turn an unused second floor into reading rooms, tutoring space, and a quiet resource center for women, rebuilding their lives after difficult transitions. 6 months earlier, I might have considered the project too small for my schedule. Now it felt strangely important. I accepted before Susan finished explaining the budget. 3 days later, I was standing inside the library with paint samples spread across a folding table when Evelyn walked in. How did you find me? I asked. You mentioned Susan. I called her. I crossed my arms. That is slightly unsettling. She invited me. Evelyn glanced around the room. I offered to fund the renovation. No. She blinked. You have not heard the amount. Still no. Claire, this place needs new lighting, flooring, furniture, and probably another $20,000 beyond the current budget. I know. Then why refuse? I looked at the unfinished walls around us. Because I need one thing in my life that does not exist, because a Hartwell paid for it. Evelyn went quiet. I expected resistance. Instead, she nodded. Fair. She turned toward the door, and guilt immediately tugged at me. Wait, she stopped. I pointed toward a stack of paint cans. You said you wanted to help. I do. Then come Saturday morning wearing clothes you do not care about. Her expression changed. What happens Saturday? You learn how to paint a wall. She actually showed up. At 8:15, Evelyn Hartwell entered the library, wearing jeans, sneakers, and an old gray sweatshirt. You are late, I said, by 15 minutes. Chief executive officers apparently operate on a different clock. I brought coffee. She lifted a cardboard carrier. Your defense is improving. We worked for hours. Evelyn was terrible at painting corners, and surprisingly patient when I corrected her. By noon, a streak of pale blue paint crossed one sleeve of her sweatshirt, and she was laughing at herself. I had never heard her laugh like that. There was no boardroom restraint in it. No practice public smile, just Evelyn. We ate sandwiches on the floor because the tables were covered with supplies. She told me she had started working for her father at 19 and had spent most of her adult life trying to prove she deserved a last name she had never chosen. That sounds lonely, I said. Evelyn looked toward the freshly painted wall. It was normal. I did not know there was a difference. Something inside me softened. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But curiosity. When we returned to work, our hands reached for the same paintbrush. We both stopped, then laughed and pulled back. It was nothing, really. Yet for the rest of the afternoon, I found myself noticing when Evelyn smiled. Near sunset, my phone rang. Susan had located one of the former Hartwell contractors on my list, a woman named Rebecca Collins. She was willing to talk, but only privately. I told Evelyn. The warmth disappeared from her expression. When? Tomorrow. She looked at the half-finished room around us, then back at me. Claire, there is something I should tell you before we meet her. My stomach tightened. What? Evelyn slowly set down her paintbrush. Rebecca did not lose her business because of my mother. She paused. She lost it because of my brother. My brother, I repeated, and Evelyn's face told me there was more behind those two words than she wanted to say. Daniel Hartwell was the company's executive vice president, the charming public face who appeared at charity dinners and development announcements beside his sister. Until that moment, I had assumed Margaret Hartwell was the center of everything. Evelyn shook her head. Tomorrow. Rebecca deserves to tell you herself. The next afternoon, we met Rebecca Collins at a small coffee shop in Cambridge, far from Hartwell headquarters. She was 51, with silver beginning to show in her brown hair, and the careful manner of someone who had learned not to trust powerful people easily. Her commercial landscaping company had once employed 23 people. Daniel wanted me to approve materials that were different from what the project specifications required, Rebecca said. I refused. Within 3 months, Hartwell stopped sending us work. Then other developers stopped calling. I felt an uncomfortable familiarity in every sentence. Did Margaret know? Evelyn asked. Rebecca looked directly at her. Your mother knew enough to stop asking questions. Evelyn lowered her eyes. That answer seemed to hurt more than an accusation. Rebecca handed us copies of old correspondence she had kept for 5 years. When we left, Evelyn barely spoke until we reached the sidewalk. Claire, my family did this before you. Your brother did, and everyone around him made it possible. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and stopped walking. It is my mother. Answer it. Evelyn hesitated, then accepted the call. I could not hear Margaret's words, only Evelyn's increasingly controlled replies. Yes, I met with her. No, Claire is not influencing me. I am reviewing company records because that is my responsibility. A pause followed. Evelyn's expression hardened. I understand exactly what is at stake. When the call ended, she stared across the street. She knows. About Rebecca? About us investigating. The word us landed strangely between us. What does she want? I asked. Evelyn gave a humorless smile. For me to remember that Hartwell Properties supports thousands of employees, and that one scandal could affect people who had nothing to do with any of this. It was a powerful argument, because it was partly true. That evening, Evelyn came with me to the library. We sat on the floor beneath the pale blue wall we had painted together. If you expose this, I said, what happens to you? The board could remove me. And your family? She looked away. My mother made that clear too. I understood then what Evelyn was being asked to trade. Not money, belonging. I had spent months wishing someone powerful would stand up and declare that what happened to me was wrong. Now that person was sitting 3 feet away, and I suddenly hated the price she might pay for doing it. "Stop," I said. Evelyn turned toward me. "What?" "The investigation. Stop helping me." Her expression went still. "Why would I do that?" "Because I will not become the reason you lose your family." "You are not the reason. That distinction will not matter when everything falls apart." Evelyn moved closer, not touching me, simply meeting my eyes with an openness I had never seen in the boardroom. "Claire, you keep assuming I am doing this for you." The words stung until she continued. "You started it, but I am doing this because I have to live with who I am after it is over." I could not answer. She reached into her bag and placed a document beside me. It was a formal notice for an emergency board meeting scheduled for Friday morning. At the bottom was Margaret Hartwell's name. "They are giving me a choice," Evelyn said. "End the investigation and protect the company, or continue and risk losing control of it." I stared at the notice, then at the woman beside me. "What are you going to do?" Evelyn looked around the unfinished library, at the walls we had painted without money or status meaning anything at all. "I do not know yet." And that frightened me more than if she had already chosen. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn sitting beneath that pale blue wall, telling me she might lose the company her family had spent decades building. By morning, one thought had become impossible to ignore. I had spent 6 months waiting for someone powerful to give my life back to me. Maybe that had been my mistake. I called Evelyn before 7. "Do not come to the library today." Silence. Then, "Why?" "Because I have work to do." I called Rebecca first, then Susan, then every former client who had ever told me they trusted my judgment. I opened the cardboard box from my old studio and spread 6 months of records across my kitchen table. For the first time, those documents did not look like evidence of everything I had lost. They looked like tools. By noon, Rebecca had connected me with 2 other contractors. One had records, another remembered names and dates. I contacted an attorney who specialized in business disputes and professional defamation. I told her I wanted everything handled legally, transparently, and without favors from Hartwell Properties. "You understand this could take time?" she asked. "I have already lost 6 months," I said. "I can spend a few more getting the truth right." That afternoon, Evelyn appeared outside my apartment anyway. She held 2 coffees and looked exhausted. "You told me not to come to the library," she said. "You did not say anything about here." Despite everything, I smiled. That sounds like something a chief executive officer would say. Inside, she stopped when she saw my dining table covered with organized folders. "What is all this?" My next step. I explained the calls, the attorney, and the other contractors. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached for her phone. "I can have our legal department provide everything you need." "No." Her hand stopped. "Claire. No Hartwell attorneys, no Hartwell money, no private settlement. I am trying to help." "I know," I softened my voice. "But I need you to understand something. If I get my reputation back, because Evelyn Hartwell rescued me, then my name still belongs to a Hartwell." She stared at me. I could see the moment the meaning reached her. Slowly, she put her phone away. "What do you need from me?" "The truth. Nothing more." "That might be the hardest thing I can give you." "Then give it anyway." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Evelyn smiled, and there was something almost relieved in it. "You know, I thought standing beside someone meant solving the problem for them. Sometimes it means trusting them to solve their own." She looked at the files. "And staying?" I nodded. "Staying helps." She remained there until evening, but she did not make a single call on my behalf. She sorted dates while I compared invoices. She ordered takeout when I forgot dinner. She listened when I became frustrated. Somehow, that meant more than any check she could have written. Just after 9, we found it. A chain of internal approvals connecting Daniel Hartwell to all 4 contractors, including me. At the end was an email forwarded to Margaret 5 years earlier. Her reply contained only one sentence: "Protect the company from unnecessary exposure." Evelyn read it twice. The color seemed to leave her face. "She knew," she whispered. I wanted to comfort her, but there are discoveries no one can soften. Evelyn closed the folder carefully. The board meets tomorrow at 9. Then you know what you have to decide. She looked at me. So do you. I understood. If she walked into that meeting with the truth, I had to be willing to stand behind my own evidence, without hiding behind her power. I reached across the table and placed my hand over the folder between us. I am ready. Evelyn covered my hand briefly with hers, warm and steady. So am I. Then her phone lit up. A message from Daniel appeared on the screen. Evelyn read it, and her expression changed. What did he say? I asked. She turned the phone toward me. Daniel knew about the other contractors. More importantly, he knew I had contacted an attorney, and his final sentence made one thing clear. Tomorrow's board meeting was no longer about whether Evelyn would protect the Hartwell name. It was about whether the Hartwell family could convince her that protecting the truth would destroy everyone else with it. At 8:45 the next morning, Evelyn stood outside the Hartwell boardroom with the folder pressed against her side and asked me one question. If I walk through that door, are you prepared for what happens afterward? I had come only to give her the final copies of my records. The meeting itself belonged to her. I spent 6 months being afraid of what your family could take from me, I said. I am done letting fear make decisions. Evelyn held my gaze, then nodded. So am I. The doors closed behind her. I went downstairs and waited in the lobby, surrounded by polished stone, quiet footsteps, and the enormous Hartwell name mounted behind the reception desk. An hour passed, then another. I tried reading emails, but every few minutes my eyes returned to the elevators. At 11:20, Evelyn finally appeared. She looked exhausted, but there was something different in the way she walked toward me. What happened? I asked. I gave them everything, my breath caught. Everything? The contractor records, Daniel's approvals, my mother's email, your documents, Rebecca's documents, all of it. She sat beside me. Daniel argued that the decisions protected thousands of employees from costly disputes. My mother said exposing the past could damage retirement accounts, current projects, and people who had nothing to do with those choices. What did you say? Evelyn looked toward the company name across the lobby. I said protecting innocent employees does not require lying about innocent contractors. I felt something warm rise behind my ribs. And the board? They wanted me to authorize an internal review that would remain confidential until they decided what should be disclosed. You refused. It was not a question. Evelyn smiled faintly. I refused. She had proposed an independent investigation instead, with outside counsel, restitution for businesses that had been unfairly harmed, and new safeguards preventing executives from quietly blacklisting contractors. Then she had done something no one expected. I offered to step down temporarily while the investigation happens. I stared at her. Evelyn, if I am asking everyone else to accept scrutiny, I cannot exempt myself, because my name is on the building. That sentence told me more about her than any magazine profile ever could. What happens now? The board votes this afternoon. Her phone rang. She glanced at it but did not answer. My mother. You should talk to her. She told me before the meeting that if I continued, I was choosing strangers over my family. And are you? Evelyn turned toward me. That is the part she does not understand. Doing the right thing is not choosing strangers over family. Sometimes it is refusing to help people you love become worse versions of themselves. I thought about my own months of silence, about Rebecca, and about every small business owner who had believed surviving meant accepting what powerful people decided. Whatever the board does, I said, you did not lose today. Evelyn's eyes softened. Neither did you. By late afternoon, the decision arrived. The board approved the independent investigation. Daniel was placed on administrative leave. Evelyn would remain chief executive officer, but surrender authority over the investigation completely. Hartwell Properties would notify the affected contractors and establish an independent claims process. It was not justice completed. It was justice beginning. Outside the building, Evelyn stopped beneath the gray Boston sky and released a breath that sounded as if she had been holding it for years. I thought I would feel victorious, she said. What do you feel? Sad. I understood. Truth could set something right without making the loss disappear. I stood beside her without trying to fix it. After a moment, Evelyn looked at me. "Thank you for not asking me to save you. Thank you for finally realizing I never needed that." She smiled. Then her phone chimed with a message from Margaret. Evelyn read it silently. "What does she want?" I asked. Evelyn slipped the phone into her coat pocket. "She wants me to come home tonight and decide whether I still belong in the Hartwell family." For the first time, I saw fear cross Evelyn's face, and I realized the boardroom had not been her hardest choice after all. That evening, Evelyn went home to her family, and I went back to the library because I did not know where else to put all the feelings I could not name. I told myself I was checking the paint, measuring shelves, organizing supplies, anything except waiting for my phone to ring. It never did. By midnight, I understood that whatever happened inside the Hartwell home belonged to Evelyn. For once, I would not chase an answer before she was ready to give it. 3 days passed. The independent investigation began. My attorney received confirmation that my case would be reviewed along with Rebecca's and the others. Former clients started calling after Hartwell Properties publicly acknowledged that several contractors might have been treated unfairly. One even apologized. It should have felt like victory. Instead, every good thing carried an empty space where Evelyn had been. On Sunday afternoon, Susan asked me to stop by the library. When I arrived, the new lights were glowing above the reading area, and the pale blue walls looked warmer than I remembered. Then I saw Evelyn standing near the window. She wore jeans and the same gray sweatshirt she had ruined with paint. "Susan set me up," I said. I asked her to. Evelyn looked tired, not the kind of tired sleep could fix. My mother gave me a choice that night. She said I could apologize to Daniel, distance myself from the investigation, and keep family matters inside the family. And if you refused? She said I should not expect things to remain the same between us. My chest tightened. "Evelyn, I am sorry. Do not be." Her voice was gentle. For the first time, I told her that belonging to a family cannot require surrendering your conscience. She looked around the room. Then I left. I wanted to tell her she had done the right thing, but right and painless were not the same thing. "Why did you disappear?" I asked. Evelyn lowered her eyes. "Because I finally understood what my family took from you, and I could not stop wondering what you saw when you looked at me." "What do you think I see?" "Hartwell." The word came out almost like an apology. "The name on the contract, the company that damaged your reputation, the family that made you close your studio." She swallowed. "And after all of that, you still chose me?" The question was so quiet that for a second I could hear only the hum of the new lights above us. I stepped closer. "Evelyn, I did not choose your family." She looked at me. "I did not choose your company, and I certainly did not choose your money. I chose the woman who walked into a room knowing the truth might cost her everything and told it anyway." Her eyes filled with emotion. "I do not know what happens next." "Neither do I." "That does not scare you?" "Of course it does." I smiled. "But I spent too long believing certainty was the same thing as safety." Evelyn gave a small laugh, and suddenly she looked like the woman who had stood beside me holding a paintbrush instead of a billion-dollar company. I reached for her hand. She held mine carefully, as though the gesture mattered precisely because neither of us owed the other anything. "There is one condition," I said. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Another one?" "No rescuing me." "Agreed." "No deciding what is best for me because you have more resources." "Agreed." "And when things get difficult, we tell each other the truth." Evelyn squeezed my hand. "Especially then." We stood together in the room we had helped rebuild, surrounded by fresh paint, empty shelves, and space waiting to become something useful. Months earlier, I had thought losing my studio meant my story had ended. Now I understood something different. Sometimes rebuilding did not mean restoring life exactly as it had been. Sometimes it meant deciding, piece by piece, what deserved to come with you into whatever you built next. 1 year later, I stood beneath a new brass sign bearing the words Claire Donovan Design and discovered that getting your name back feels different when you understand what it is worth. My new studio was smaller than the old one, just 900 square feet on a quiet Boston street, but every client had come because of my work, not because Evelyn had made a phone call. The independent investigation had taken months. Hartwell Properties formally cleared the contractors who had been unfairly blamed, compensated documented losses through an outside process, and introduced new rules preventing any single executive from quietly damaging a contractor's reputation. Daniel resigned. Margaret withdrew from her remaining advisory role. Evelyn stayed as chief executive officer, but the company she led was no longer allowed to operate on the assumption that protecting the Hartwell name mattered more than protecting people. My relationship with Evelyn changed too, slowly, carefully. Honestly, there were dinners after work, Sunday walks along the Charles River, arguments we refused to leave unfinished, and ordinary mornings when she appeared at my studio carrying coffee and pretended she had not memorized my order months earlier. She never offered to finance my business again. I never asked her to apologize for being born into her family. We learned that love became healthier when neither person had to become smaller for the other to feel secure. On the anniversary of the day we first painted the library, Susan invited us back for a community celebration. The building was full of families, volunteers, students, and women using the upstairs rooms we had once imagined while sitting on an unfinished floor. Near the entrance was a small plaque honoring the neighborhood volunteers and local businesses that had rebuilt the space. There was no Hartwell name displayed above anyone else's. Evelyn noticed that immediately and smiled. "Perfect," she said. Later, when most people had gone home, I found her holding the bottom of a ladder while I hung a framed painting in the reading room. "A little left," she said. "Your left or my left?" "Claire, there is only one correct left." That sounds suspiciously like chief executive officer logic. She laughed, and I looked down at her from the third step. A year earlier, I had known Evelyn as a name on a phone screen, attached to everything I believed had ruined me. Now I knew the woman who forgot lunch when she was worried, who was terrible at painting corners, who called Rebecca every few months to ask how her business was doing, and who had learned that accountability was not betrayal. I climbed down and studied the painting. It showed an unfinished bridge stretching across water toward morning light. "Do you remember what you asked me here?" I said. Evelyn nodded. "Whether you could still choose me after everything. I think I finally understand why the answer mattered so much." She waited. "We do not choose people because their history is perfect," I said. "We choose them because of what they do when they finally understand the truth." Evelyn took my hand. "And if they make mistakes? Then they take responsibility, learn, and keep choosing better." She smiled. "That sounds difficult." "It is." I squeezed her hand. "That is why it means something." We turned off the lights and walked toward the door together. Before leaving, I glanced once more at the room we had helped build. I used to believe rebuilding meant recovering everything that had been taken from me. I was wrong. I never got my old life back. Evelyn never got her old family back either. What we found was something more honest. The freedom to decide what came next. Family may shape where we begin, money may change what doors are available, and fear may tell us which ones should remain closed. But character is built in the choices we make when no answer is painless. And love, I learned, is not someone arriving to rescue you. Sometimes love is simply finding a person willing to stand beside you while you rebuild your own life, then handing you the hammer when you are ready to build something together.